Good evening, colleagues. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting, but one, i.e. not counting the annual council meeting. Can I take it that these minutes are approved? Councillor Tindall.
Because we still have a few issues over the content of it. We were happy to leave it in the hands of the Chief Executive.
The Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been brought to my attention that there was a discrepancy in the voting totals under item 1 minutes at the meeting of the 13th of April, where 33 members were present, but only 20 votes were recorded as having been cast. It is, however, accepted the decision remains unchanged. Moving forward, I have requested the following process be put in place. Prior to any vote, the Mayor will announce if the vote is intended to be recorded or unrecorded. Only recorded votes will be minuted, and we will minute individual votes by member name. Otherwise, the minutes will display for, against and abstain totals only. During any live vote, we will monitor the number of votes cast against the number of members present. And if there is any discrepancy during this process, an announcement will be made to give members sufficient opportunity to cast their vote. During a live vote, should any member have any query or experience any issue when submitting their vote, they should raise their hand and an officer from Democratic Services or ICT will provide you with assistance. Once a vote is closed, if it is the case that a member present has not submitted a vote, this will be recorded in the minutes as abstained, no vote cast. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I take it, therefore, that the minutes of the 13th of April 2022 are acceptable? Thank you. I shall sign those in due course. Are there any declarations of interest? None. Okay, announcements. I have Councillor Hollinghurst.
It is I. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask for some guidance from the officers, please? I do not wish to refer to the matter raised by the member of the public because that is a planning matter, of course. However, the gentleman who was speaking had plenty of time in which to explain the reasons for his question and the background to it. And yet, Mr. Mayor, you cut the gentleman short and asked him to proceed to his question forthwith. So therefore, with your indulgence, I would like to ask if the officers can give some guidance as to whether it is proper to curtail a question in this manner when the person raising it has plenty of allocated time to go.
Mr. Hollinghurst, I realise that I'm a new mayor, but I don't think this is the time and the place to rejig the format in terms of questions from the public. But I'm happy to take the officer's advice if it is different. What do you think?
Clarification. I believe that Councillor Hollinghurst was referring to the amount of time that the questioner had and the fact that during the course of the asking that question, you curtailed his opportunity to explain what the question meant while he still had time within his allotted period. I think that was the thrust of Councillor Hollinghurst's question to the officers, and whether or not the member of public should have been entitled to actually explain what his question was about.
Yeah.
We were given notice of the question in advance, so what the Mayor was asking was for the question to be read out, because this is the question that has been put to Councillor Anderson. So the response that has been prepared has been on the basis of the question that's been asked by the member of the public.
Excuse me, sorry to prolong the meeting, but the problem is there are a considerable number of councillors around this room that have no idea what the question was about, because the member of public was curtailed. If the member of public had been allowed to continue his explanation, we would have all understood what the meaning of the question was.
I'm sorry that you have difficulty in reading the question. It was actually circulated, and it seems to me perfectly explanatory in itself as to what is going on. However, as Councillor Anderson says, we are not curtailing the questioner's ability to approach the appropriate body if and when this issue comes before the planning committee, that is development management, then he's entitled to address them. Thank you. We'll pass on now to announcements. I have no announcements. Chief Executive? No announcements from the Chief Executive. We now move the group leaders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tender apologies on behalf of Councillors Binder, Durrant, Johnson, Imani, Silwell and Timmis.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies on behalf of Councillors Wilkie, Pringle, Ransley, McDowell and Foster.
Thank you. We now turn to the Leader of the Council and members of the Cabinet. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing under this particular section of the agenda, but happy to take questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Symington.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the Leader of the Council whether he agrees that the democratic process is severely limited if we invite members of the public to come and speak for 3 minutes, and in less than 50 seconds we cut them off and ask them to read out a question that clearly is not a 3-minute question because they wouldn't have submitted 450 words, a 450-word question to read out at Council.
No, I do not. The standing order, the process for public participation is that a person or any person wishing to participate submits their question, and that question can be 30 seconds or up to 3 minutes. And when they attend, they read that question. It doesn't come with an unprovided statement.
Any other questions? Have you a supplementary?
I don't think the circumstances make any difference. So they've got 3 minutes and they can submit whatever question they want to us in advance, as Mr. Butler did, and then that question is read out. What you can't do is come forward with informational questions that you haven't previously submitted.
Thank you. Any other questions for Councillor Williams? Okay. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, the Leader of the Council will not take it amiss if I take an opportunity during the week to ask the monitoring officer about the interpretation of the question asking process.
Councillor Williams.
It's not a question, Mr. Mayor. It doesn't need my permission.
Thank you. We'll move on now to Councillor Griffiths.
Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I missed you. Who is it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did push my red light and my microphone has come on.
Sorry, Councillor Rogers, I missed you.
Sure, no problem. A question for the leader. It's about the number of staff who are actually attending in the forum. Over the past few months, on my infrequent visits, I've noticed that there are very few officers on site, it would appear. Clearly, many continue to work from home, fully understandable under the circumstances, but now the rest of the world is getting back to normal. And I'd like to know how many officers are actually coming into the office, coming into the forum, how many are actually, in a percentage terms, how many are available for consultation, not only for residents, but also for councillors, because on many, many occasions, I don't know if other councillors and members of the public have had the same level of service. I'd like to know the sort of red or amber and green traffic light systems that we're actually achieving in terms of being available, because many officers have actually turned their mobile phones off as well and made themselves unavailable. So we can't call them back because they take on the privacy button on their mobiles. So I'm a little confused there, but it's just about the level of service that we're achieving from the number of officers who are in the building.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Rogers for advance notice of the questions for me to gather the information. On average, over the last month or two, there are 88 members of staff present in the forum on the average working day. Staff are expected to attend the forum on 2 days per week. So I don't know if that's a percentage. I would tell you that around 40% of time would be here. But that doesn't mean to say that staff are not working, because there are quite a number of staff who would be based here, but are home, out working, housing officers and building surveyors and things like that who would be out and about. We are currently undertaking a customer service review, which will look at, along with our new ways of working, which will look at, how much of this building needs to be used, or how much time staff need to spend here, and better use of technology. Some of the issues that you've raised in the second part of the question about non-availability and getting contact with officers, it's disappointing to hear that you can't make that contact. Systems are in place for voicemail messages to be transferred to emails and people to pick them up. And generally, I find that you're not always going to get someone at their desk when you ring them, but you should get a call back. If there are issues that are not being addressed there, then they should be addressed to the Chief Executive to be dealt with. But also, I would expect how we deal with some of those communications issues in the new working environment to be dealt with through the customer service review, both to the benefit of customers and to the benefits of staff and members.
Thank you.
I see no other questions for Councillor Williams, so we'll turn to Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, you took me by surprise as I'm last on the agenda. But anyway, I'm ready.
Not on my yellow sheet.
Okay, under tenant and leaseholder services, we've introduced an Orchard Web for the housing income team, and this has offered benefits to the team, providing efficiencies in the collection of rent arrears. The current rent arrears are below the level at this time last year. We've upgraded the community alarm systems, which have been completed in 2 supported housing schemes. Under strategic housing, the implementation of the new housing allocations policy, alongside full system updates and data cleansing, has now been completed. Successful handover taken and allocation of the new build homes in Coniston Road and Kings Langley. The 5th Afghan household has been resettled into a private sector property in line with the ACRS resettlement scheme. A successful warrant enforced with the police support of a privately owned home due to regulatory breach, and this was the unlawful occupation of an outbuilding. Further enforcement action is also being taken against the same homeowner due to an illegal eviction. 181 households currently occupy temporary accommodation. The service is starting to see an increase in the presentations from households concerned regarding affordability, and is working closely with partners in relation to developing a cost of living symposium. Under Property in Place, a new compliance dashboard for monitoring all 6 compliance areas is being developed under the Home Standard. We're developing a reporting template to encapsulate performance and exception narrative for consideration by SLT each month. We're engaging with the sector recognised compliance experts called Manifest Consulting to review compliance and act as a critical friend as we continue to improve. There's a continued focus on complaints as a result of repairs. The focus on void performance to improve key-to-key and reduced rent loss. And we're engaging with government-funded services, foundations, to review DFG processes from initial contact through to completion. And we're starting the journey to produce a whole organisation asset management strategy that will consider key themes such as stock performance, both financial and non-financial, impact of social housing on climate agenda, data verification, and the maturity of the stock, and maturity, which is the stock condition survey. And as the new build is no longer part of my portfolio, there will be no request from me to add it to the minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Councillor Griffiths? Councillor Barry-Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering on the tenants and leaseholders, say on the maintenance services, when we'll be getting these results from that, or if there's been any going on at the minute, if the people that have been invited to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. I presume you're referring to what we're going to do with the new contract when the Osborne one runs out. That's what you're referring to. There's a whole load of consultation going on, including with us as members. We haven't had our first meeting yet, but I think to date there have been 3, might even be 4 by today, and they will be going on through the summer as well. They will all form part of the feedback that will come back to us as members on that working group, but also to the overview and scrutiny as part of the whole package of what we're going to do and where we're going to go forward. There are no preconditions to this. It's literally the blank sheet of paper. What do people want from it? And then what will the market deliver?
Thank you. Councillor Symington.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've had an email from one of the lead people of the Berkhamsted parish team expressing thanks, deep thanks, for the fact that the council has been able to move ahead and house a 5th family. My question is, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for letting me say something before asking a question, especially as it is a particular thanks to the council. My question is, it obviously took a question to full council, it's taken a number of emails, and apparently it's taken nearly a whole year in total for that house to be delivered to the family. So 2 parts to this question. Firstly, are we able to speed up that process for future? And secondly, which I suppose is contingent on the second question, which I should have asked first, is it possible for, and will the council be looking at housing other families that still are local to us in decorum? So if you take the second one first, that would probably be best.
I'll try and take them all together. I think we need to know where we are. We are trying to square a circle. I've just said we have 181 people in temporary accommodation at the moment. We have found housing for 10 families from Syria. We have now, with the aid of the Berkhamsted, we've been able to enable 5 Afghan families. So far, I don't think we've had any Hong Kong families present to us, but that is a possibility as well. And of course, we have the Ukrainian issue. I think members ought to be aware that we are getting people presenting as homeless because of family breakdowns or it not working out for the British families that have taken on board the Ukrainian families. I'm not sure what's going to happen in 6 months' time when that payment stops. And so what I'm trying to say is we have a lot of pressure on our housing, and it's balancing that whole, us being a good council, caring about other nationalities and nations and what they're going through, but we also need to care about our own. And so I don't make any apology for the fact that we reviewed this in line with everything else that's going on. We also have to think of our staff who are dealing with all these issues day in, day out. So we have a care of duty to them also. So no, I make no apology for the fact it has taken a year. And I can't make any confirmed commitment that we'll be able to take any more because of the reasons I've just stated. Obviously, if we're legally instructed by the government to do so, we will not break the law, we will do it. But I think we've done our fair share at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Hollinghurst.
Thank you very much indeed. We've had a salutary lesson, I think, over the last few days about the way in which climate change can wreak severe damage upon our environment and our social structure. Photovoltaic cells are the quick fix, and I'm very grateful indeed to be able to give my appreciation to the portfolio holder for the progress which is being made in attaching photovoltaic cells to the roofs of some of the council's buildings. Will she accept my appreciation for that? Then I have supplementary.
Obviously, Mr. Mayor, I'm very happy to accept his thanks for that. And we do obviously do what we can, not only on the council buildings, but on the homes of our council tenants as well, and flats. And all new build have them on.
Graciously accepted. Councillor Hollinghurst.
And my gracious supplementary question is, having made a good start, can the portfolio holder assure us that she will make every effort to increase the number of photovoltaic cells, bearing in mind that this is, in climate change terms, a quick fix and can produce quick results?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last point on my report was starting the journey to produce a whole organisation asset management strategy that will consider key themes such as stock performance, both financial and non-financial, i.e. anything to do with anything that makes our homes safer, more energy efficient, warmer or cooler, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. We shall now move on to Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under environmental projects, the team have been filming drone footage in several parks across the borough, with 3 short films being made for Love Parks Week, Splash Park promotion and Parks and Open Spaces promotions. The film will be posted on the DBC website, YouTube and social media. We have created a new zero waste map on the borough website showing locations of recycling points, refill shops, repair cafes, community fridges, etc. To celebrate Biodiversity Day, the Decorum Climate Change Network gave away thousands of packets of bee-friendly wildflower seeds to residents and local schools. And to tie in with our Biodiversity Day celebrations, we ran a primary school competition to win a large insect hotel complete with planters, compost, flowers and wild seeds. The team subsequently spent an afternoon with the winning school, helping them to assemble the hotel and helping them with the planting. We're organising a closed swap in conjunction with Open Door at Berkhamsted Civic Centre, which will take place in September. And we launched Refill and Go trails on World Refill Day. Residents can download a loyal-free app and follow the trails. Every time they refill in a business, they can get a free entry. They get free entry into a competition to win a variety of reusable items. Trees and woodlands. We've held meetings with friends groups at Bunkers Park and Chipperfield Common. We have met habitat consultants at Dundale and Bunkers Park prior to commissioning surveys at each location, and we have participated in discussions together with strategic planning and housing developers about delivering biodiversity net gain on new housing developments. Clean, Safe, Green. We continue to have several vacancies, however, I can confirm that the number is reducing. Third cut grass cutting has commenced and fourth cuts commencing on priority routes. A new grab lorry has been delivered, which has increased the efficiency of fly tip collections and thereby will produce an overall cost saving. All summer bedding plants have been planted. The first batch of road nameplates have been ordered, however, installation has been delayed due to contractor availability. The Jubilee event was a big challenge, however, the team worked hard over the whole of the Jubilee period to ensure clearance of the large quantity of extra litter that was generated. We've been meeting with the Football Association to explore additional funding for maintenance of sports pitches and digital pitch assessments. And we collected 352 fly tips over this last quarter. Under waste services, we successfully covered all collections over the Jubilee bank holiday period, working with no disruptions to our service. We've carried out electric inspections at Cubic Green over a period of 3 weekends. And the outgoing tonnages of waste for the quarter were 3,843 tonnes of commingled recycling, 3,518 tonnes of garden waste, and 1,220 tonnes of food waste. Again, during the period, we have a total of 449 bulky item service requests and 1,237 sharps box collection requests. Under parks and open spaces, works have been completed at the Mooga at Leverstock Green. The canal fields play area improvements are scheduled to be completed by this Friday. Final works of laying the safety surface were delayed due to the climatic conditions. However, this is taking place over the next 2 days. The opening is subject to final sign-off by ROSPA, which will hopefully take place this Friday. So hopefully it will be open the following Monday. All planting, wildflower, turf lay and benches and other works in the area around the COVID tree were successfully completed on schedule for the ceremony on the 16th of July. Work to improve part of the programme, part of the playground at Bovingdon Memorial Hall has commenced in partnership with Bovingdon Parish Council, and we're working on the first stages of a major project to improve facilities at Coronation Fields. That's all. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor England, I'm sorry that you've run out of time, but if it's a quick one, I think we'll stretch things.
We're just starting.
Okay, thank you. Oh, right.
Does the portfolio holder join me in acknowledging the great and largely successful efforts of Clean, Safe and Green to overcome staff shortages and deliver over the Jubilee period and the early start to this week, Monday and Tuesday? These labour shortages caused by the government's disastrous and undercooked Brexit deal, which has left districts and boroughs compensating for a distinct lack of free movement of labour, particularly for drivers in the last year or so, since Boris Johnson's surely ironic Freedom Day, which was a year ago today. And does the portfolio holder acknowledge that miscollections are now gradually increasing, especially where there has been a loss of expertise on the routes due to staff turnover?
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Councillor England. Yes, I'm quite happy to join with you in congratulating the Clean, Safe, Green staff for the excellent job that they do and did do over the Jubilee weekend. As far as any increase in miscollections are concerned, I'm not aware of the numbers, but I can check that and get back to you with a number to confirm whether they have or not increased, but I'm not aware that they have increased. Thank you.
Does that indicate that you would like another question, Councillor England?
I left my microphone on to indicate just that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we heard at Spey, that drivers have been diverted from other duties in order to keep the show on the road. What effect has this had on, for example, grass cutting or other driving jobs which would normally be done? And what is the portfolio holder's plan to resource and recruit those duties?
I don't think the shortage of drivers on waste collections had any effect on grass cutting because the skills are different. We are continuing and will continue to endeavour to recruit more drivers. That's an ongoing campaign, as I'm sure the Council will recognise. That's a difficulty suffered by all organisations, whether they be public bodies or commercial organisations. Thank you.
Councillor Banks. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Indeed, I do. Councillor Barrett, I've recently spent some time over in Essex in the Epping district looking after my parents, and one of the first questions I asked was around dustbin collection. And I was advised by my family that maybe Wednesday, Thursday or Friday, but put all the dustbins out because they've got no idea which ones would be collected. Would he please congratulate Cupid Green on their outstanding work in maintaining services across Decorum?
Absolutely. I'm delighted to hear Councillor Banks' comments, and I'm delighted to be able to congratulate the staff at Cupid Green. They do an excellent job. They've done an excellent job for a number of years. I can't think of any time when the service has fallen down during the whole of the COVID period and beyond. So I think we've got an excellent staff there, and I think we should all commend the work that they do. Thank you.
Councillor Symington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Barrett, for your report. I also would like to add my thanks, which I've received from the residents of Berkhamsted West, who particularly mentioned over the Jubilee weekend the care that the Clean, Safe and Green team took when they had all their bunting up. So a big thank you for that. My question is, it relates to the cleaning of the A41. I believe it was mentioned at a scrutiny committee, which I don't attend, but I can see the minute that, the minutes that the A41 was deep cleaned ahead of mowing. What it doesn't say is, what is the coordination between Decorum Borough Council and Herts County Council around those two activities? Did they take place simultaneously and with the same road, obviously not closure, but restrictions, or were they done on different days? Thank you.
Mr. Hampton.
Yeah, I can confirm that CSG always liaises with Herts County Council in respect to litter collection on the A41, and always endeavour to coordinate the litter collection with the grass cutting or any works that Herts always carry out. As far as I'm aware, on the last litter collection, that was done at the same time as Herts had their road closures, and that does produce an enormous cost saving to the borough in coordinating the work at the same time.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for Councillor Barrett. Councillor Williams, I'm sorry to say that I possibly thought you'd got off lightly, but I see that you have another portfolio, commercial strategy and delivery.
Yes, I did wonder for a moment, Mr. Mayor, which list you were working from, because you missed me out on both of them. But there we are.
Just thought you needed a rest.
Oh, no, I've just lost my page now. Picking my machine up. That wasn't good, was it? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items under corporate strategy, commercial strategy. I'd like to report on the improved performance from our leisure services with increased income against the expectation when we set the budget a few months ago. There are still risks to achieve pre-COVID income targets, but there is increasing use of facilities. The outdoor pools are now open for the school holiday period as a result of a significant effort by EA to secure necessary chlorine stocks. As members may be aware, the opening of the outdoor pool was delayed because there is a national shortage of chlorine, and the one outdoor pool that Hemel uses more chlorine than the rest of the pools at Hemel combined, and therefore it was decided that to get prioritisation, because it's outdoors, it goes through the chlorine much quicker, I'm led to believe. Significant progress has been made towards the installation of EV charging points across council-owned car parks. Final negotiations, I'm sure members will be pleased to hear, are taking place during July on the terms and conditions and heads of terms with Connected Curb and Osprey for a range of provisions, and DNA surveys have been largely undertaken, with a few sites remaining outstanding. Detailed proposals return to Cabinet over the autumn once the DNA results are analysed and the feasibility of installation has been completed. The garage team has been recruited to now and has a full-time commercial manager to implement the strategy agreed by Cabinet earlier in the year. A detailed stock condition survey will be procured in the next few weeks to provide the data for detailed service and stock planning. Happy to take questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Douras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the portfolio holder agree and join with me in congratulating our parking services team, who have recently won the Patrol Parking and Traffic Regulations outside London PACER Awards for the best customer service for their parking services within Decorum. And I think it's a credit to them and a credit to Decorum that from all the counties and boroughs in the country, we've come out number one.
Yes, I'm very happy to add congratulations and delighted to hear they've won an award. It's not very often that that parking services and particularly CEOs get praise. Normally it's a lot more criticism than it is praise, so I'm absolutely delighted that they've been recognised for the work they do.
Oh, Councillor Symington again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad you're enjoying my questions this evening. Councillor Williams, I wanted to ask a slightly maybe left ball question, curveball even. I'm not a cricketer. Councillor Burney, I'm not a cricketer, as you'll realise. Sorry? Oh, it's baseball. Oh, worse still.
Thank you.
I'm going to be super confused. So, you have a commercial strategy. Excellent. In terms of things that might feed into it, a number of residents I have in my ward have asked if they can have white H lines either refreshed or painted outside their houses. Now, I know this is something that the council has a policy, not necessarily an obvious policy on, but generally the answer to new ones is no. And even refreshing seems to be randomly applied. My question is it possible, given that this is what residents want, and they understand that these lines are unenforceable, for you to offer this service on a commercial basis, i.e. that you can recoup the costs of doing it, given that the lorries are out there painting lines anyway?
I'm not going to commit to yes or no on that, although I have to say that commercial means to me you make a profit, not just recoup your cost. If you're recouping your cost, it's a little part in providing the service. My understanding is that clearly the operations we carry out on the highway in relation to parking enforcement, yellow lines, traffic regulation orders are done under the guise of our agreement with Hertfordshire County Council, or the Highway Authority. And my understanding when I've inquired about H lines in the last couple of years is that the County Council don't encourage them. In fact, they don't support them anymore, and they won't put new ones in, and they won't replace old ones. They're not enforceable, and there's no reason to put them in. So I'm happy to go back and check what the position is for our parking service. We have to operate the rules that we apply under the rules of the County Council on whose highway we're operating.
Can I come back, please?
Please do.
Thank
you may
you.
exercise your dulcet tones again.
A supplementary question. Please. Thank you. So my supplementary question is I hear what you say about Herts County Council, and I understand that. In terms of the profit that you will be making, obviously that depends how you apportion costs. So you could run it under a commercial project if you apportioned your costs in a certain way, and therefore you could make it look more profitable than it is if you do that. So is it possible for you to apportion costs so that this is a profitable activity and therefore would meet your criteria for a commercial activity?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if I'm interpreting the question in the way in which it was asked, because what it seemed to imply is you can massage the figures to make a profit look what you want it to look like. And I'm not sure that's the way in which I would want to operate. There is a set cost. There is a cost of a contractor going out and painting the line. There are invoices for that, and that is a fixed cost which you can exactly understand, because if they tell you it costs 100 quid, it's 100 quid. And then there is your officer time in booking and processing that, and that is a bit more difficult to price out. Clearly, those are incidental to the fact of whether you're allowed to do it in the first place, because if you're not allowed to do it in the first place, how it's done and the cost of doing it is irrelevant. So going back to my first answer, the first thing to do is to ascertain exactly what the County Council policy is in relation to these markings.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned the EV chargers in borough car parks, which we of course welcome. I was wondering if you could share which of the 5 car parks are proposed to be going forward, if I understood your report properly, that is.
clearly not quite, Councillor Allen, because I didn't mention 5 car parks. The list that the operators are assessing is much more significant than 5. It's all of our pay and display car parks. It's some of the neighbourhood centres. But in the end, it will come back to their assessment of the commercial viability of installing in those particular centres. So at this stage, we don't know exactly which ones it will be, but the number being considered is far in excess of 5.
Apologies, I misheard.
It's all right.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the portfolio holder agree with me that car ownership and use is putting yet more pressure on finite parking across the borough? And can he say how much the enforcement demand increases per year? Approximately.
Approximately was the addition, Councillor.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise that. Enforcement demand. Our contract is that we provide a fixed number of enforcement hours per week, per month, per year through our contract with our enforcement contractor, and therefore that available resource is spread around enforcing the contract. Parking is finite, but in many areas of the borough it's not subject to traffic regulation orders or controls, and therefore there is no patrolling or enforcement in those areas. We can't enforce in residential areas by and large, so if there's, and it's often a misconception that we can enforce against pavement parking, which outside London is not an offence unless you're completely obstructing the pavement, and then that can only be enforced by the police. The time when pressure on our parking enforcement does increase is when we introduce new CPZs, because they're more intensive in terms of being enforced, and we have far more of those than we used to have, so there is a pressure there to patrol those. But by and large, we have a fixed resource, and that is deployed as most appropriate by the service and by the management, so that the available resource is constant.
Thank you. Councillor Hollinghurst.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Could I continue, please? Have a supplementary.
Are we allowed supplementaries on these? No, I'm told you're allowed it.
Thank you. Okay, so how does the parking contract, how often is it reviewed? How often is the amount of resource needed reviewed?
Councillor Williams.
The contract is I inherited the contract. I think it's around 5 years with a period to run. We can review that. I mean, with the contractor, we can review that at any time. But clearly, if we want more enforcement, then there is more cost, and we have to balance off, the cost against the amount of resource you want to make available. You could have more officers on the street, but I'm not aware that the service gets lots of requests for additional enforcement. And where we do get requests to enforce against particular problem areas, then we do so. But we're not currently looking at increasing the resource in terms of hours of patrol.
Thank you. Councillor Hollinghurst.
Thank you very much indeed. I was very pleased indeed to hear about the negotiation with Osprey for new EV parking charging points. And they're probably going to be the 7.4 kilowatt ones, which we've already got in car parks here and there across the borough. Extending this to community centres will be very good indeed. But my question is this. In addition to the 7.4 kilowatt chargers, we do need, I think, at least 100 kilowatt rapid chargers in 4 key locations, and at least 2 in each. Near Junction 8, coming off the M1, of course, in Maylands Industrial Estate, Bourne End A41 Services, and on the Tring Industrial Estate. These are essential for the establishment of regular EV use, because if you're going a long journey, you do need to charge up rapidly. Those would be 4 areas which would be most useful to long-term travellers in addition.
Thank you very much for your dissertation, sir, but you've run out of time.
Can you please, portfolio holder, can you please assure me that these rapid charges are being considered as part of the Osprey contract?
I'm afraid, do you wish to make that?
I'll do it in 25 seconds.
You can do it in 25 seconds. I wouldn't want to disappoint you, Mr. Councillor Harlinghurst.
The reason the contract is split between two providers is one is providing the smaller charges and Osprey will provide the larger, more powerful charges. But to disappoint him, they will only be provided in locations where Decorum Borough Council owns the land, and that's certainly not any of the 4 sites that he listed, although I am aware that Shell are introducing EV charging at their site at Breakspear Way.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. We now move on to Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, turning first to environment and community protection, I am pleased to report that the Air Quality Steering Group, suspended through the pandemic, met in late June. We are refreshing our terms of reference, with objectives being to monitor our air quality action plan and to look at ways to improve air quality with a focus on our 3 air quality management areas. As a reminder, Mr. Mayor, the air quality management areas are parts of Lawn Lane, London Road, Apsley, and the High Street in Northchurch. A further update will go to the overview and scrutiny later this year. Fly tipping prosecutions, a review of covert camera footage captured image of 2 occupants of a vehicle disposing of assorted wooden items. We have successfully prosecuted this fly tipper who assisted his uncle to dump rubbish in Coles Lane in Flamstead. Perhaps this will be the warning that people have been waiting for. Mr. Mayor, we take a zero tolerance view on fly tipping, and we will pursue these serious offences that blight our communities through the use of either the fixed penalty notices where appropriate or through prosecution where it is necessary. Mr. Mayor, turning to community. To ensure the community safety team partnership take an intelligence-led approach to tackling the crime and disorder that is most affecting residents, businesses and visitors to Decorum, and to protect the most vulnerable in our communities, we are developing a comprehensive strategic assessment of crime and disorder here in Decorum, and this will inform our strategy and partnership plan over the next coming years. Tackling domestic abuse remains a high priority, ensuring that victims of domestic abuse can access the services and support they need. We also will be looking at how we can work with our partners at Herts County Council to see if we can develop effective preventative programmes and activities for those that cause harm in order for them to change their behaviours. I am pleased to report work is underway with Community Action Decorum, working with the voluntary sector to see what can be done to support residents in coping with the current cost of living crisis. Officers are looking at 2 dates for a conference in September and a follow-up in October. Both these will be anchored around the housing and communities overview and scrutiny for feedback. This intelligence gathering exercise will pull together a comprehensive information base of organisations providing support and assistance to our residents. And finally, Mr. Mayor, Decorum has been allocated just over £1.7 million as up to March 2025 from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which succeeds the old EU structural funds and supports local business, people and skills, and communities and place. A partnership group has been established to oversee the development and implementation of this investment plan, looking at delivering various projects and programmes that will support our residents and business. A webinar was held on the 29th of June for partner organisations to share information about the SPF fund, its opportunities and processes. I'm pleased to report that 23 organisations were represented, and we've had 61 expressions of interest have been received of people looking for more information and to contribute towards our delivery. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Banks. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the portfolio holder believe that it is a good idea that district enforcement do not give a heads up as to exactly where they're going to be patrolling, so that those who are going to drop litter or not clear after their dogs are not displaced to somewhere else?
A simple yes will do.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Guest. Absolutely. The pilot that we are currently running around the PSPOs looks to ensure that district enforcement visit all our wards, villages and towns. And indeed, it would be giving the game away if they publicly announced where they would be attending. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Banks. Councillor England.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to quickly comment, is it not obvious from the... No, sorry, that's not my question. I'll stick to my question. Does the portfolio have any indicative figures on air quality, up or down, on the levels of pollution in the worst areas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor England. At the moment, I believe we're still waiting for them to be ratified from DEFRA, but I can advise members that North Church, air quality levels are now significantly reduced, and if it hadn't been for the COVID pandemic, where obviously transport was reduced and so every area had showed an improvement, that would most likely have been removed from the air quality management list. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, do you have another question?
I do. Can the portfolio holder comment on the general level of air quality across Decorum, which I understand is actually a lot higher than the public might think that it is? Is it as good as it could be?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor England. I don't have figures to hand to justify the position, and I'm not quite sure that we actually collect data widely across Decorum. I think we have had a period through COVID where with people staying at home, the air quality has significantly improved, and we are working tirelessly to ensure that we remain a clean, green environment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is also on district enforcement, but if you will indulge me, the tone of your voice when you just made the response on North Church's air quality decreasing, did you mean to say that the pollution was decreasing, or did you mean to say that the air quality was decreasing?
Thank you very much for the point of clarification. Absolutely, the air quality is improving significantly.
Okay, thanks. So with regards to district enforcement, is it correct that the on-the-spot fines, the amount for on-the-spot fines have increased to £100, or are the reports of people being receiving £100 fines more people masquerading as officers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no on-the-spot fines issued by district enforcement, and the fine remains at £80. I have not had any cases brought to my attention, so would appreciate if outside this meeting you could update me.
Happy to do that. I just finding them on social media.
Thank you, Councillor Friedman. Councillor Barry Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mine's also a question about the district enforcements and the officers and the fines. I was just wondering if there's any data available sort of on the ages of people who are being given fines the most, what for, as I'm going to reference social media. It seems that it's a lot of young people being almost targeted because they may have dropped something. They're not being given an option to pick it up. I know they shouldn't be dropping things, but there was a case, I'm sure we all saw it the other day, someone spat a fly out of their mouth and they got a fine. So I'm just wondering if there's any sort of data on ages and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. As part of the review of the pilot, I'm sure that is something that will be looked at. the information that I do have to hand, that there was 3 fixed penalty notices issued to young people that were found to be inappropriate because of their age, and they were withdrawn. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you to Councillor Banks.
Thank you.
You don't have a supplementary. Councillor Adeliki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, my apology for not advising you in advance of this of this question. Of late, there has been a spate of 13-year-olds missing in the courtroom. I think in the last 4 months, we've had about 11 13-year-olds gone missing, and the police have come up with an explanation of missing and found, with no further explanation. Will the portfolio holder, on behalf of the council, perhaps approach the police department here to let us know exactly what is going on, whether this is as a result of outside influence, and what they are doing in particular to keep our youngsters safe in the borough? And secondly, will it be appropriate for the portfolio holder to perhaps get the chief of police to come and give a presentation at the council?
Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question. I would like to congratulate the police on the first instance in their rapid use of social media to alert residents across not only the borough, Hertfordshire, but also nationally, of missing young people, because obviously it's very alarming to family and friends of those individuals. I am, having had a quick look at the Decorum Police Twitter, I'm able to assure you that the young person you've referred to has been returned safely home. Does seem as if there has been an increase. I'm sure that the community safety teams that liaise with police every day, every morning, it's the first thing that they do, would alert us if there was a particular upward trend that we needed to be worrying about. But I'm happy to take that up and ensure that that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. You have no supplementary. Councillor Watt? You do?
Yeah, just a quick one. The portfolio holder has not answered the second part of my question. That is inviting the police chief here to explain to us exactly what they are doing, because this is an ongoing space.
Councillor Banks?
Thank you. My apologies. As I sat down, I remembered your second question. I do apologise. I think it may well be appropriate that it came through to scrutiny committees, but I'll take advice from officers on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Whitelow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about my ham-fistedness with this system. Councillor Banks, I wonder, can you let us know whether we have any idea yet about how well the district enforcement measures are being accepted by local residents? Feedback in my ward is very good, and I just wonder whether that's been reflected across the rest of Decorum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It depending on your source, certainly I know that it's welcomed by police, and I've had feedback from the park. What's the word I'm looking for? The
supervisor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The open space maintenance men, that they have found a huge improvement in both lack of dog fouling and lack of litter, enabling them to get on with their job in hand. The feedback I've had from residents is very similar in my ward, and indeed it has been an interesting debate through social media. And although there's been some initial shockwave, I do think most of the comment now is in support, and I welcome residents' feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor England, we've got 37 seconds.
I'm quoting SPAY figures. Is the fact that 88% of litter fines are in Marlowe's not itself an advertisement of where the substantive patrols are going to be? It's a matter of record that at least 5 wards have seen no fines at all. How is this disguising the location of the patrols? 10 seconds.
Councillor Banks.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Mayor. I lost the very last part of that question.
Can I have some extra time to
Go
cover
ahead.
this question?
Thank you very much.
I think
Absolutely.
she's being helped out.
Mr. Mayor, that information, although obviously members of the public have access to minutes, isn't generally shared. And you are absolutely right. There are a number of prosecutions from the Milos, but that is our biggest meeting point across decorum.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. We now move on to Councillor Anderson, who is the new portfolio holder for police.
Oh, thank goodness I'm not last. Thank you,
Please.
Mr. Mayor. Well, hopefully I've drowned. No, I haven't. I was going to say hopefully I drowned the frog I had earlier, but it's still there. On the Chiltern Beechwoods moratorium, good progress has been made on the three elements of the mitigation, especially the work the National Trust needs to do at its own estate at Ashridge. The Council, meanwhile, is working to identify the sites which we need to upgrade to draw people away from Ashridge, and read those sites, working on existing usage surveys and future capacity plannings so that we can actually achieve that. We're optimistic that we can partially lift the moratorium in the coming months, starting with the parts furthest from Ashridge, such as Hemel Hempstead. The Two Waters Opportunity Area Consultation Pilot, despite technical difficulties and having to extend the consultation period, it went well, attracting 1,000 contributions, which is more than we would have received with previous traditional forms of consultation. It was one of the 3 digital pilots undertaken for the government, and we've learnt much from the consultation, never mind the feedback received as well. Cabinet has approved the Paradise Site Design Code scheme, which will be put out to consultation shortly. Hemel Place, on Friday the 8th of July, the Council successfully launched the Hemel Place story to take forward our efforts to promote the town, and it was attended by 80 key stakeholders. I hope members have seen some of the branding that's on the lampposts around the town, and a website's been set up called thinkhemel.com, and it's all put in place for the Queen's Baton Relay for the Commonwealth Games. In May, the independent chairman of the Hemel Place Board, Andrew Percival, and a team of our senior officers attended the UK Reef Business Exposition in Leeds and made 50 new contacts. Hemel Gardens communities work is continuing on the overarching framework plan, and as we move on to the next stages, we're looking at involving more of the local members involved. The South West Herts Joint Strategic Plan. The Vision and Regulation 18 consultation has been agreed by all 6 councils involved and going out to consultation in September. Under commercial assets, for those of you missing Councillor Elliott's regular slot, performance of commercial assets is strong, with occupancy above 95% and income 3% above budget. The team are working to obtain drainage licence from the Environment Agency for the Poppy Fields Cemetery, and I'm pleased to report the restoration and repair of Boxmoor's War Memorial has been completed. Under housing development, from Councillor Griffiths' portfolio, previously in Councillor Griffiths' portfolio, as mentioned, the Coniston Road scheme in Kings Langley has recently been completed. Eastwick Row is a major scheme started in February and is progressing well. And there are no less than 14 other major projects at various stages of development. I can't believe I've done that. In 3 minutes and 20 seconds, that's got to be a record. I'm happy to take questions from this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. I was going to say that you didn't have any questions, but I see Councillor England has put that right. Excuse me. Oh, Councillor Elliot, I'm sorry, I didn't realise you weren't asking a question now.
Would the portfolio holder agree with me that the renovation of the War Memorial is a fantastic job and a fitting tribute to the people who served this country in all conflicts? And I'd like to pass on my congratulations to the Estates team for arranging it.
Absolutely, and hear.
Oh, was that a question? Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the portfolio holder give an indication of the location of the sites where Hemel residents will be expected to go instead of Ashridge?
Not as yet, but that will be provided when it's available.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
And will he be putting his name to the campaign to promote these sites ahead of when the moratorium would be relaxed?
I didn't know there was a campaign. Sorry, I'm not sure I quite understand the question or the motive for it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Was that an answer to my question?
Would you care to repeat it? If was it you couldn't understand, hear it, or understand it?
I didn't see how the answer related to my question at all.
I think that we can probably take it as an answer. Thank you. Councillor Symington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I wondered if you could just clarify a couple of things you said. I think you said, well, in fact, I wrote down that you said that you were making good progress towards lifting the moratorium and negotiating with the National Trust. Could you define what good progress means in that context? And also link it to, you said, yes, so following on from that, you said that in the coming months. So not so long ago, the coming months was meant to be September. Are we still on target for September, which is 2 months away, or has it slipped and will it be later in the autumn?
At this stage, I can't really put a precise deadline on it. You know, the work that's undergoing is, as I've mentioned, is we have assurances that the National Trust are working on improving their estate to resolve their side of the bargain. And we're working on ours. I can't really put any, I can't say that the whole thing's going to be done by the 15th of September. I don't think anybody could do that, but I can assure members that the progress is being made.
Thank you, Councillor Anston. If there are no other questions, Councillor Douras.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Elliot has reminded me of the War Memorial, and that prompts me to ask Councillor Anderson if he would join with me in welcoming the fact that Dacorum Borough Council has now re-signed the Armed Forces Covenant for the next 10 years, having signed it 10 years ago. It's quite appropriate that it should be renewed to recognise the work that we do to support our armed services personnel.
Absolutely, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned the Two Waters consultation and that lessons have been learned. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. What sort of improvements will come from this trial in future?
I think one of the interesting things about the consultation was that we actually made it too easy for people to comment, to the point where people were firing off comments. Sorry, I'm getting away from the microphone. People were firing off comments which weren't actually placed on the map relevant to what they were talking about. And we need to, how can I put this, control contributions so that when people are commenting on a specific location, it's actually at that location on the map. Unfortunately, because it was sort of free form, it's going to make the collation quite a significant job. But that's one example of how the consultation in future can be improved. I mean, it was excellent. I mean, I took part in it myself, and the way you could click on any location in the area and say what you thought about it, whether you liked it, whether you disliked it, how you'd like to see it improved, all those issues. What were the important issues? For example, was it difficult to ride a bike in terms of trying to get more sustainable transport usage, right through to people commenting on, but certain, I won't say which building, but certain buildings being hideously ugly and could be, could be redeveloped as a really good opportunity for the future. So I think it was a really good exercise. It just needs a little bit more fine tuning. And I'm just really pleased that Dacorum's in the vanguard of piloting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Allen, do you have a supplement?
Yes, I'll try and make it a question. So I wonder whether part of the difficulty that I understand residents had was the connectivity, and I had a lot of comments that suggested that it was easier to use if you used a PC rather than a telephone, and that might explain why some people got the tags in the wrong place.
Yeah, there were also other technical issues early on, and that was the reason why we extended the consultation for a much longer period than originally planned.
Thank you. If there are no other questions for Councillor Anderson, that leaves us with, last but not least, Councillor Elliot and Corporate Services.
That's it. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Evening.
In finance, the Revenue and Benefits team continue to support our residents in the delivery of financial support schemes. Over 43,600 payments of £150 have now been paid as the energy bills rebate for residents living in council tax bands A to D. Approximately 30,000 of these have been made directly into residents' bank accounts, with the remainder paid as credits against council tax accounts. This means that in total we have now paid over £6.5 million of financial support for residents. In addition, Decorum has been allocated £289,350 to provide additional support to residents through a local energy rebate scheme, which will support the most vulnerable residents with further financial support. The final arrangements for this scheme are currently being agreed through portfolio holder decisions. Applications are now being received from local businesses for reductions in business rates under the COVID-19 Additional Relief Fund. This scheme will support businesses which were affected by the pandemic but were not eligible for retail, hospitality and leisure relief. Information about to apply for this is on the Council's website. The Financial Services team has recently published the Council draft accounts for 22-23 in advance of the statutory publication deadline. The external audit process is now underway, expected to conclude during September. The team has undertaken significant development work on the Council's medium-term financial strategy, which will be brought before members in the autumn. The service continues to ensure that Council staff and suppliers are paid accurately and on time. Collection of income due to the Council is an ongoing priority and is carried out with due consideration to the current cost of living pressures. Our Legal and Democratic Services team ensured that through the hard work of the licensing team, recent events in Gadebridge Park were able to proceed efficiently. Now I'd like to mention that Farida Hussain, our Deputy Head of Legal Services, will be leaving the Council in a few weeks' time to take up a new role as a monitoring officer. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Farida for her service with Decorum and wish her well in her new role. Thank you. Now, moving on to people and transformation, it's been a busy few months. Our new permanent strategic director, Adrian Wilkie, started at the beginning of June. He's a fellow Scotsman, although he's a St Johnstone supporter, so we might not get on too well, but we'll try. The Council's transformation work progresses at pace. Work has been ongoing to develop new digital people and communication strategies, which members will see shortly. These are augmented by a Cllr delivery programmes. In the background, officers have also been developing our capability and ways of working to ensure that our transformation objectives are realised and our corporate plan is delivered. It has been a very busy time for the communications function. They have been hugely involved in the popular series of summer events, including the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, Armed Forces Day, and the Commonwealth Baton Relay and Wellness Festival. In addition, we have launched a resident survey to gain valuable feedback on our services and plans for the borough, and also produced and circulated Decorum Life magazine, delivered to over 65,000 homes in May. As well as promoting the summer events, the team has focused on publicising fly tipping and environmental enforcement prosecutions, the opening of Northridge Way basketball court following refurbishment, the start of work on Canal Fields Playground and Trings Great Skate Park, changes to Regulation 10 parking tickets and changing to housing allocation points system. From a technology perspective, we have now completed the AV enhancements in the forum. This has seen the installation of technology supporting hybrid Teams meetings in all meeting rooms, as well as the provision of large touchscreen monitors so that users can collaborate on and export digital whiteboards. In the conference room, we have installed ceiling microphones so that hybrid meetings can be held without fixed microphones needing to be laid out in advance. And finally, we have upgraded the Orchard housing management system to the latest version, development of an exciting new digital strategy and successful recruitment to the service desk, which should see further improvements in performance. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I've just made it, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Brilliantly timed, if I may say so. Questions for Councillor Elliot? No question.
I've got my lights on.
Oh, Councillor Adeliki, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very short question for the portfolio holder. In your presentation, you mentioned that you've got some extra fund for people that were not entitled to the core fund that was distributed out for the COVID relief fund. How are these people being advised that they are entitled to the fund?
Okay, thank you very much. We have about £3.8 million available. And as these are businesses that haven't been able to qualify through the previous grants. So it's only businesses that have not received any grants from us in the past. Now, we have identified 700 businesses that may be eligible. As I speak, we've had around 130 applications. So it's a case of just assessing them, going through them, but we will endeavour as best as we can to get that cash out to businesses that have not had help previously, so that we can get this borough back on the businesses back on its feet again.
Thank you, Councillor Elliot.
Sorry,
did you have a supplementary, Councillor Adeliki?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Elliot. My question really is, the first wave of payments that we made, there was huge publicity surrounding it, both by the council and by the government. On this occasion, how are we informing the people that are entitled to it? Because you say you've only got, I can't remember the number now, people that already applied. How are we going to make sure that people that are entitled to it actually get the fund that is due to them? Thank you.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've identified 700 businesses, 130 have applied. We are doing our best through the websites, and it's word of mouth, businesses talking to each other, but maybe some of these businesses don't want to do it, have moved on, have not around anymore, or just thought it's not worthwhile doing it. But we are very cognizant of the fact that this money's there and we have to distribute it.
Thank you, Councillor Elliot. Since there are no other questions, we move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is a motion proposed by Councillor Ron Tindall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I thank the Leader of the Council for presenting an amendment which we have accepted, and therefore what is before you is an amended motion going forward on the subject of the cost of living. I understand the text is going to be put up on the screen, but if you would like me to read it out, or...
I'm instructed, Councillor Tindall, that you must move your original motion first.
I've accepted the amendment, and we have accepted the amendment in its entirety. So, and Councillor Williams is going to second the amended motion, So therefore, there is no need to go through the rigmarole, as it were.
I think you've got one over for the officer there, Councillor Tindall.
Pardon?
I think the officer agrees with you.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, it just saves time and everybody's energy in the board evenings. Can I say, as I said before, I thank the leader of the council for proposing his amendment, which we've taken in its entirety, and so this motion is a motion that I hope the whole council can agree. It is presented to the council without prescription or time limits, so that decorum can come together to support those in our communities who are affected by the cost of living crisis. I do not intend to do anything other than set out the facts at present and urge the whole council to support this motion and the future work that will derive from it. There is a cost of living crisis, and there is no doubt that it is likely to continue for some time, possibly 2, 3 or more years. Further, we have no way of knowing when external factors such as the Russian invasion of Ukraine or further pandemic pressures will end. It is for that reason that this motion calls upon the officers to look at and improve Decorum's present support systems that are available to help vulnerable residents, including making availability to such support easier to those in need. But we're also looking to ensure that we're able to support our communities into the future. So the motion also calls about action to bring together all those involved so that the support given is coordinated, gets to those in need, and our efforts are not wasted. It may be that we have to ensure that our local organisations are supported themselves so they can reach out to the communities in need. I know that the council presently works well with those local organisations, but let us ensure that everything that we are doing and could do is structured and gets to the target. The third point concerns the burden of taxation on those who can least afford it and looks at the medium term. There is no news of the cost of living crisis easing. Indeed, the available information suggests that interest rates will continue to rise next month. Therefore, the motion asks that this council has discussions with the county council. I'll leave that bit out because the motion has changed slightly. The only other point I would like to make is that Joseph Rowntree Foundation has produced a first-class summary of the increased problems of managing a cost of living crisis on a low income. And I know that it is not necessary to repeat them in this council chamber, except perhaps one statistic that illustrates most clearly the growing need. Citizens' Advice have reported that while food bank referrals in a particular period in 2021 were 400 a day, demand has climbed in the equivalent period this year to 700 a day. And I doubt this extraordinary pace of increase will slow anytime soon. I commend this motion to you and ask for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Councillor Williams, do you wish to speak?
I second and reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any other contributions from the floor? Councillor Taylor, thank you.
Sorry.
We are facing the worst financial crisis since the war. A financial time bomb of unequal proportion in modern times. Energy has gone up in price by 54%. If current predictions are followed, it will go up by another 65% in the autumn, making a total increase of over 150% in 1 year. And there is no likely reduction in sight. It is estimated that it would cost someone on the state pension a third of that pension to pay for their energy bills in future. The £400 government help provided will be swallowed up and not be noticed when it is due to be paid back, and any tax cuts that may be given will pale into insignificance compared to the cost of the energy people have to pay for. Families will be faced with the choice of starving or freezing. Brexit has cut us off from the European labour market to do those mundane jobs nobody else wanted. Companies are faced with no choice but to increase pay to compensate for scarce labour. As a result, we hear stories of social workers quitting their jobs to work in McDonald's. How will we as councillors continue to provide the essential services in these circumstances? Inflation is now the highest in the G7 countries. It is likely to get worse. So far, many businesses have tried to absorb the increase in costs, but soon they will have no choice but to pass these costs on to their consumers. The way governments have always dealt with inflation in the past is to either increase taxes or increase interest rates. If the government will not do the former, the Bank of England will do the latter. It will have a very serious impact on anyone who needs to borrow money. Whether you're a house buyer or a business, it will be hard. I have touched on just a few of the problems we face in coming years. We as elected representatives have a duty to act. Governments at all levels must prioritise helping those least able to help themselves. We will need to open the doors of public spaces to allow people to come in and keep warm when they cannot afford to heat their own homes. We must focus on how we pay our employees so that they are not forced to seek alternative employment when they are not able to cope on the salaries they currently receive. And we must plan now how to focus to respond to this crisis so we are ready with the help when help is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Any other contributions? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to rise to second this motion, and whilst in redrafting this, I didn't want to make it too long and wordy, but I did want to emphasise that it is not just in Decorum or with our partners in Decorum that we are seeking to work. I was at a meeting of the Herts leaders this morning, the 11 councils in Hertfordshire, and we have set up a cost of living working group amongst the Herts leaders to coordinate activity across the county, recognising that there will be challenges for our community going forward, and it's not going to be a 1 or 2 month fix. Clearly, there has been some significant support from government, and in the £400 that Councillor Taylor mentioned, in the significant rise in the national insurance threshold, in the council tax rebate, and in the £650 of additional funding to people on universal credit. But it is right that the challenge will rise as we face the winter, that those challenges will get all that greater. We can only hope that some of the international pressures that are on not just us or Europe or the world will ease, most notably the war in Ukraine, not just for the benefit of the residents of the United Kingdom, but more significantly, I suppose, for the residents of the Ukraine, that situation is resolved, but the effects of that situation are obviously far more widespread than just in Ukraine. So we are working across the piece, and I do hope that on the conclusion of current events in Westminster and the successful election of a new Prime Minister in September, that the government will continue to focus on the cost of living crisis and the effects on the residents of the United Kingdom in supporting that. What does disappoint me is, not for the first time this evening, that we try and weave this link to Brexit into problems that clearly are not Brexit related. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Tindall, do you wish to sum up? Thank you, Councillor Tindall. In accordance with the suggestion made by the Chief Executive, we shall have to go to a recorded vote on this. I'm sorry. I am instructed that we can only move to a recorded vote if 3 members request it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes?
sorry if I may, as the Constitution doesn't require a recorded vote, and I suspect this is not going to be contentious and likely to be unanimous, I'm not sure what the benefits of recording
May
are.
I just ask if anyone is going to object to this motion as amended? Can anyone show if they intend to? If not, I agree with your suggestion, Councillor Williams, that we accept the motion as amended by universal assent. Thank you. We shall now move on to motion 2, which is proposed by Councillor Garrick-Stevens. Councillor Stevens, do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a seconder. I'm proposing.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Do you want me to read out the whole of the motion?
I think we can take it as read.
Take it as read. Good. Thank you. In June, the soon-to-be ex-Prime Minister announced that the government was confirming its plan to extend the right to buy to housing association tenants. That set off alarm bells, as the reality of the historic right to buy policy has undermined availability of much affordable housing, which is leading to societal breakdown. In addition to that announcement, I came across an article written by Lord Kerslake, who used to be the former head of the civil service, who is now chair of the Peabody Trust. It was rather an angry document, pointing out the fact that that the trusts are independent bodies and do not take kindly to being told what to do. Among the little detail released by the government, it said 2.3 million housing association tenants would be given the right to buy as an extension to the current right to buy scheme. The government would work closely with housing associations on the design of the scheme. The scheme would be capped to ensure it is affordable within existing government budgets. And there was going to be a commitment to build replacement homes for each one sold, with Minister Gove suggesting a like-for-like replacement. So on the face of it, what's not to like with such a proposal that appears to address the replacement issue? As with much that comes from government, the devil is in the detail. Not being an expert on social housing sector, I looked for reports that councillors would regard as authoritative and found the 2022 UK Housing Review by Glasgow University, which is commissioned amongst others by the Chartered Institute of Housing, and found that in part of the summary, over 2.8 million homes have been sold under right to buy. And potential buyers under the right to buy face a lottery of different purchase prices and relative costs of mortgage payments and rents, which in layman's terms means that a 3-bedroom house costs a lot different in one part of the country from another. But the discounts, especially in England, provided a disproportionate benefit to tenants, often far exceeding their cumulative rent payments. And in fact, the discounts are a huge transfer of public wealth to the private sector. Up to 1.1 million right-to-buy properties have been private tenancies, possibly on multiple occupancy, with greater insecurity, higher rents, and often poorer management and maintenance. The downside, many new households in small towns or rural areas who cannot afford to buy are unable to access housing locally because of right to buy. For households unable to buy, the long-term consequences of right to buy have been very serious. And in the 40 years from 1980, capital receipts from right to buy across Great Britain exceeded £58 billion. Most were used to repay debt or reverted to the Treasury, and few were retained for local reinvestment. And the section on this summary concluded, the right to buy has become a strategic failure in England, and unless reconsidered, the policy will continue contributing to social disadvantage and exacerbating inequalities. Now that's very anodyne language from a study by well-respected academics. Contrast that with another headline, How Right to Buy Ruined Britain, which arguably reflects the views of countless thousands of people desperate to escape the worst of the private rental sector. Now, the extension to the right to buy in the housing sector was, in the housing association sector, was in the Conservative manifesto in 2015, as it's long been an aspiration of the Conservative government. I found that work had already been done to pave the way, with the National Housing Federation leading for the housing association sector. In 2015, the Federation, on behalf of its members, put forward a proposal to the government on how it could deliver its commitment to extend right to buy by way of a voluntary agreement rather than legislation. It wanted to make sure that any system delivered for tenants, housing association, that delivered for tenants, housing association, and the government. The agreement was based on 4 key principles: discounts for tenants, control over which houses to sell, full compensation, and flexible one-for-one replacement. They undertook a number of pilots, and the outcome was evaluated by consultants with a report published in February 2021. Now, as a result of that, we'd expect policy would be developed from a very sound evidence base. On its website, the Federation on its website summarizes, our agreement with the government at the time of the voluntary right to buy pilots was based on a clear set of principles, with our red line. Remember that phrase? Our red line being that every single social home sold would be replaced. Evaluation of the pilots demonstrated how difficult this is to achieve, as there's not enough money from sales to build new social homes. On current figures, less than half the homes sold have been replaced, and those that have been replaced are rarely replaced at social rent levels. And I have a very enthusiastic comment from the author of the original guidance, which went on to say, tenants have the opportunity to buy their homes, which is going to extend the policy, etc. It really delivers for everybody and will provide the blueprint for best practice. And it's also going to extend the right to buy that, and increase the number of properties, which I don't understand how he got to that stage. Among the little detail released, the government said, sorry, wrong page. It's going to increase the number of affordable homes under the voluntary agreement. Now, I identify the fact that a pretty casual relationship with numbers here. Replacing one-to-one does not equate to boosting the supply of new affordable homes. I think you'll all agree on that one. So here we are in 22, with the government determined to grab a headline with a scheme that the evidence shows will lead to a policy failure with further loss of affordable homes. If the home or related alternative is transferred to the tenant, its replacement, according to the government guidance, can be anywhere. Nationally, it says. The government, in effect, is treating the housing association sector as one homogenous body, as opposed to the myriad of individual housing associations rooted in their communities. And the text actually says, replacing one-for-one basis nationally. Now, it stands to reason. A transfer to a tenant without a local replacement will reduce the availability of an affordable home to a local resident. We already have huge difficulty in negotiations with developers for affordable homes. We need to avoid making things worse for our residents. And I hope all members can agree that there are some serious flaws in the current guidance on the scheme, and this needs to be corrected. Our motion recognizes that one of the key elements of the guidance, the government has undertaken to meet the full cost of discount, but this doesn't go far enough. In light of the published evidence from the pilots, as the current scheme specifically allows for a replacement nationally, we also call upon government to commit to meeting the full replacement cost of the dwelling within the same locality, and to meet the operational cost of administering the sales process. Housing associations must be given a solid commitment that government will meet all the costs to replace the property, not just for one, but I'm told it needs to be on a like-for-like basis in the same area. In our case, in this borough. I move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Friedman, you seconded the motion. Do you wish to speak now?
I will reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Contributions from the floor? Councillor, could you... Thank you. Councillor Griffiths was first, I think, even though she had problems poking her button. I can see Councillor Hollinghurst wants to speak as well. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to that I will be voting against this motion on the basis that, from all the evidence I have, this is up for consultation. There is no direction yet on where the government is going with social housing. With the social. The likes of Hightown. Housing associations. Sorry, I do apologise. And so, are we not putting the cart before the horse? I presume that the member himself and the group opposite will be joining in the government's consultation when it goes out for wider consultation. At the moment, it's only happening with the housing associations. And I don't think we can judge something that none of us have seen the detail of because it hasn't been published yet. So I don't think we can really vote on something that we don't know anything about. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Hollinghurst.
Thank you. I don't think it's quite true. This is something about which we don't know anything, as the previous speaker implied. We do know quite a bit about it from the hints that have been given and the drafts which have been made leading into the consultation. But the problem with social landlords is that the whole situation is flawed. If you introduce right to buy, better described as compulsion to sell, then you will find it very difficult to replace like for like and in the same area. I'm not surprised that the Peabody Trust got very upset about this. Quintessentially, that is a high-quality, a historic high-quality housing association which developed in the East End of London and around the docks. And it was precisely located to solve the social problems of the day. And sadly, the situation has rather persisted. The properties are in the right place for the people that need them. And they are in very valuable locations. So anybody who acquires one of these properties from our RSL like Peabody is really going to get something in a prime location. Wherever you build the replacement, it is not going to be in that same situation. It will be removed from the people that Peabody was set up to help. And I believe this will be true for a great number of housing associations. What we will have is a sort of pepper potting of estates and people in the local area being forced to move to somewhere else, which may not be convenient and may not be conducive to solving the social problems that RSLs were originally set up to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Hollinghurst. Councillor Madden.
Thank you. When I saw the motion, I absolutely understand everything that Councillor Stevens is saying about this. In fact, I've spent the last year studying social housing at university, so it's quite something that's very interesting to me. I was a massive fan of the Right to Buy scheme when it first came out. I thought it was wonderful that people who wouldn't ordinarily be able to afford to buy their home were suddenly able to do that. I naively thought at the time that that housing would be replaced. What's really happened is, of course, that it hasn't been replaced. So if this is something that is absolutely definitely going to be on the table, I would absolutely be supporting the Liberal Democrat motion tonight. But I do take on board what Councillor Griffiths said This is very early stages, and I do think it's a bit premature, so I will be abstaining on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a district with a large social and housing association dependency, we of all boroughs must use our voice upstream now for maximum effect and write to the ministry early doors. It seems vital for our residents that we agree this motion and help government to help thousands of our residents. Perhaps a tiny amendment would help. In the paragraph, calls upon the leader of the council to write to the minister with copies, blah, 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 requesting that the government proceeds with its proposals. Why don't we insert "and forthcoming consultation," close quotes, and then this is a timely motion.
Councillor Stevens. Do you wish to reply to that? Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm totally gone. Councillor Banks. Yes, Councillor.
I believe the Constitution allows for amendments to be made to the motion under discussion. It is for the person to suggest that amendment. If that is then seconded, an immediate vote is taken on that amendment, and then the debate continues with or without the amendment.
Is that right? Okay. Councillor England, can you confirm that you're proposing this as an amendment? And do you have a seconder?
I second the proposed amendment.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have to now discuss the amendment to the motion. Can anyone... Could you repeat your amendment, please?
In the paragraph which begins, calls upon the leader of the council to write to the minister at DH, blah, 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 after the words, requesting that the government proceeds with its proposals, I propose an amendment that we insert, open quotes, and forthcoming consultation, close quotes.
Okay. Councillor Williams, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
Well, my microphone seems to operate different to everybody else's. I can't press it in green and get into the queue because I go live straight away. So I was trying to get into the queue, but I can't. But now that you've called me, and I seem to be top of the queue anyway, so I'm gonna go now. Yeah, we're speaking to the amendment, but what I might be able to clarify is that we're not going to accept the motion as amended or unamended. And now I'll take the opportunity to say my piece on that. I think Councillor Griffiths has clearly indicated, I accept there are lots of flaws in the right to buy scheme. It's been a huge success in some aspects, and it's liberated thousands, millions of families into being able to own their own property, as Councillor Madden said, in a way which they would never have been able to do. But from the get-go, the way in which that funding has been redistributed was perhaps not as helpful as it could have been, and through the late 1990s into the 2000s, when perhaps we might have expected a more lenient view on council housing situation, and the changes to the early 2000s to housing finance made the situation for new housing, and in some of those years, if you check the figures from the relevant government department, there were no new council houses built anywhere in England in some of the early 2000 years, because the funding mechanism was so against councils. The transfer of funding from tenants back to the centre from rents made the whole construction of new council housing extremely difficult, and housing associations have picked up that piece. But in 2005, in 2014 and in 2019, and now again in 2022, has been proposals to open or extend the right to buy scheme to housing association tenants. It's never come to fruition before. In this occasion, it seems to have gathered a bit more pace with the Prime Minister making a commitment to it. But I'm not sure now that where that policy will stand going forward over the next couple of months. We understand there is a consultation going on with registered social land, with housing associations, registered social landlords in that sector. And if they proceed beyond that, there will be a consultation with more broadly and with councils and other providers. And I think that is the time when we should make our case. And if at that point there is a clear commitment to proceed with the policy, I would support the principle of what Councillor Stevens was moving, and that is that for every property sold, there should be a fully funded replacement. And I would even go slightly further, that that fully funded replacement should be at social rent and not at affordable rent, because I contend in this part of the world that affordable rent is not genuinely affordable for people who are doing some of the sorts of jobs that we were referring to earlier. I've always had trouble with the concept that affordable rent is affordable for all those who can't afford to house themselves. And it's why I've committed this council to delivering new housing at social rent, because I believe that is more genuinely affordable. But there comes a point when you make your case and move your motion and you make the leader of rights to the government when you've got something, when you understand what it is the government policy is. At the moment, I think Councillor Stevens doesn't have enough information or facts. That hasn't stopped him putting the motion forward to understand what the government policy is, and therefore, for that reason, we will not be supporting it until we understand what it is that I'm writing to the government about.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So now, Councillor Stevens, do you wish to speak again to your motion? I take it there are no other people. Councillor Freedom, yes, you reserved your right to speak.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, God. I should have asked, does anyone else want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Townsend.
Can we move the amendment to a vote, please?
Councillor Stevens apparently has a right to reply first to the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to accept the amendment.
Do we still have to vote? We vote on the amendment. Okay, I think that this had better be a recorded vote. So, we must change the we must change this in the rules of operation, I think. I need 3 members to propose that it be a recorded vote. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you. I've got 2. Thank you very much. Did you get those? Okay. So we are voting now on the amendment, the amended motion. We have had it. We've got.
So there's six votes uncast. If you're wishing not to vote for or against, you make sure you can abstain.
At the moment, we only have 1 abstention. We don't have enough votes cast otherwise. What do I get a vote? Okay. That's this one. Okay.
You voted, haven't you?
I've abstained.
I know it's Councillor Bender's on there, he's obviously a late apology.
If everyone is comfortable that they...
I've only got 36.
One lady's left, one person's left. Councillor Hearn isn't in the room, so hers will be an abstention for not being in the room.
Thank you. Councillor Hearn is not presently with us, so she will count as an abstention. And the motion is, the amendment motion is not carried. Do I have to announce the amount by what? You can see it, can't you? Thank you.
So now we vote on the...
Okay, now we are now back to the substantive motion. Councillor Freedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point, I know that Councillor Banks had her name down at one point. I don't know if she still wanted to speak.
I don't think you get a chance to after an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some concerns around Part B and freeing up more land for more housing. That sits rather uncomfortably with me when residents have made a clear commitment that they don't want us to build more housing, taking up Greenbelt. So I find that rather uncomfortable. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Freedman, I'm assuming that you will want to speak last. Yes. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't originally intending to speak at this point, but I was curious by some of the comments made by the leaders of the administration that because it's a government consultation, it would be wrong to debate this motion. Surely, if it's a consultation, this is an ideal time to have this debate, as it's far easier to shape government policy before it is firmed up than when it is firmed up. So maybe I'm new to this and therefore I do not understand those ways, but I've always found once government makes up their mind, they tend not to change it. I'm also very pleased to hear that Councillor Banks is no longer intending that the administration allow any more release of Greenbelt, because I'm sure my residents will be very pleased to hear about that. But I'm not sure whether the government will be in central if that's a reason for not doing it. I also have to ask a question about this whole principle of the right to buy, which if the government sees fit to extend the right to buy to social housing tenants, why does it not just extend the right to buy to all tenants and apply the rules consistently across all tenancies? And I've never understood this. It seems to be one rule for one group and one rule for another group. Perhaps someone could enlighten me on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Banks.
If I may just clarify my position, I do apologise if I wasn't clear. I'm uncomfortable with section B because it seems to be suggesting that there should be further house building, and I don't think that sits very well with the response that we've had to our local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Freedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, thank you everyone for your comments on the motion. It actually seems that we all appear to be in very violent agreement on this. I think the fundamental point where the majority party is taking their view to oppose this motion is to do with the timing of it and when it would be appropriate. The reason why I disagree with them and feel that it would be appropriate to comment at the moment are actually for exactly the reasons that Councillor Griffiths mentioned and Councillor Williams extrapolated on. Dacorum has an enviable record when it comes to social housing provision. We've got one of the largest stock of housing in the country. Comments from the leader of the council or as I personally think, the housing portfolio holder, carry a huge amount of weight. You've got the experience, the expertise of all of the additional challenges of managing, for example, managing a building split between social tenants and ex-tenants. It's vital to those to be submitted to the people creating that proposal. The reason that these things need to get to the authors as quickly as possible is, yes, this is not being formally proposed to consultation, but there is a draft out there in the public interest that is on the road to consultation by somebody with the expertise, and let's face it, there's not that many councils in the country. You are one of a very, very small number, so we can say you are national experts when it comes to this. Your input onto this is going to be seen a lot more than just a statutory consultation. You will hugely influence it. And if you are pointing out some of the major concerns of that before this a document comes out to full proposal, anybody competent in government would be taking those comments on board before they draft that white paper. Right at the moment, the people behind the white paper, we may disagree, but my position is it's mostly being driven by the private developers. And anything that we do at the moment that removes, that gives the private sector advantage over councils and housing associations in providing housing means that the housing that ultimately will be provided is not necessarily going to be for those who need it. It's going to be for the benefit of the people developing it. So housing associations and still ourselves as local government need to be able to provide housing that we know that our residents need, and that we know that it's with a view on the tenants' side. So we need the certainty of stock, we need the location and the communities that are affected. We need to, the housing associations need to know they're going to be consistent with charitable objectives. So this is the reason why we're proposing it now, and why I would very much ask you to reconsider about whether it's appropriate for you to comment right now. In response to Councillor Banks' comments, the motion talks about assuring that there is appropriate funding put through for replacement housing. It doesn't say anything about where or how that's to be built. So one of the things I would say is, and again, yes, we want to see what a final proposal is, but one would imagine that the government should provide as much resource as needed to build on a more expensive brownfield site, if that is what the market is requiring. If they turn around and give a partially funded rebuild cost, then yes, people are going to start thinking about whether they have to build on a cheaper greenfield site or not. We're not in any way saying that that's what they should do, but the policy should ensure that it is being a fully funded return, and that means the replacement of like-for-like housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friedman. So we shall now move to a vote on the original motion. Thank you. This will, I have to ask for three. Thank you, Councillor Williams. 3 councillors who would like to have a recorded vote. Thank you, Councillor. Get those? Thank you. So this will be a recorded vote. Yes, I've abstained. Thank you. The motion has failed. Thank you all for giving me such a hot time on my first stint as the convener of these meetings. We'll now move on to questions. And we
Can I raise a point of order, please?
If you must.
Yeah, thank you. These are written questions, which obviously we've submitted. I can't see they've been circulated. And furthermore, you mentioned earlier in the meeting that the resident who attended question had been circulated to us all. I can't see it either on the documents I have or by email.
If I was spoke in error, it was because I was assured that that had happened, Councillor Symington. These ones. Okay. In this case, apparently, these questions are not circulated in advance. That is why they are read out at the meeting.
Okay, and the resident who attended, who you said his question had been circulated to us all, can we have a clarification on whether that is true? Because I haven't received it and I can't see any evidence that it was.
I'm told that it was not circulated, but that is why he was asked to read it out.
Please, could we have an apology for the resident who attended when you said that his question had been circulated to everybody and it hasn't been?
I can certainly apologise that I was misled on that matter, but I won't apologise for asking him to read out the question in the light of what you have just said, that it wasn't actually circulated. Can we move on to current questions? And first question is for Councillor Williams from Councillor Adrian England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll read out the question. The Cabinet have set out priorities for addressing the climate emergency based on a fabric-first strategy. Please provide the following information. The number of DBC homes retro-insulated in the last 6 years to 2019 and the comparative number of homes retro-insulated in the last 3 years.
Councillor Williams, I'm assuming that we have here 3 substantive questions, so you may answer the first.
Answer to the first question is in the 3 years between 2016 and 19, the number was 920. And the 3 years between 2019 and 22, the number was 786.
Thank you. Councillor England, second question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The estimated, please provide the following information. The estimated heating savings generated from the available insulation projects as above, and from typical examples of the 5 most effective and most widely available insulation interventions available across DBC stock.
Councillor Williams. Could you put your microphone on, please?
The annual estimated fuel savings and carbon savings from those above interventions is £206,515 and 662,850 kilograms of CO2. And then I think you went on to ask the most...
He hasn't asked his third question yet. Councillor England.
I'm confused about what he's asking.
Please provide the following information. A breakdown of the numbers of each main type of insulation intervention in homes insulated and cost per home terms available and planned as part of the published Climate Emergency Action Plan claim of 90% of stock, which is planned to be completed by 2030.
Councillor Williams, put on your microphone.
Thank you. Number of each type of installation. It's planned as part of the published plan. Right, the most number of properties to be retrofitted to hit the 90% target, is that the question? Yeah. I'm a bit confused about what it is that Councillor England is asking. Right, okay. and this is based upon a 3-bedroom semi-detached house. It's double glazing, we have met the 90% target, so there are on our properties. We will continue to upgrade individual properties as and when required. For solid wall insulation, there are 564 properties to hit the target. Loft insulation, there are 1,728 at a cost of 691,200. And cavity wall insulation, there are 396 properties at a cost of estimated 237,000. I think that was the question.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor England?
I do have a third question of the 3 supplementaries. Can I ask why, with a fabric first policy, that since declaring a climate emergency, the number of properties retro-insulated has gone down?
Councillor Williams.
As I've not been the housing portfolio holder, I think that question would be more relevant to. I can only get a written answer, Mr. Mayor. And I think this is a very good example of a question with so much detail. It would have been more appropriate for an emailed exchange rather than a question at full council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor England, that is your number of questions that is allowed. We have a question from Councillor Claire Hobson for Councillor Julie Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question about the Gaybridge Park toilets. I appreciate I didn't actually put that on the written question, so for the avoidance of doubt, this is about Gaybridge Park toilets. So my question is, given the huge success of the events held at Gaybridge Park, including the Jubilee celebration, we had Armed Forces Day, there are street food market signs that are very successful, and of course we have the water park for children. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on how often the toilets have been open to the public, how often they are cleaned and checked for stock, i.e. toilet rolls and soap, and what plans, if any, the council has to refurbish them? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hobson, this is not my portfolio, but acknowledging the link that you're trying to make with the Town Centre PSPO, I am able to offer you an update. Anyone familiar with Gaybridge Park will know that there are 3 sets of toilets. In addition, there are also toilets available on the Old Town High Street. The toilets have been opened throughout all the recent events, such as our fantastic Jubilee celebration and Armed Forces Day, and extra cleans are arranged to cover the extended opening times. When an event is taking place, the toilets are cleaned and restocked every 2 hours. If no event is taking place, then the toilets within the park, and the Old Town for that matter, are cleaned 3 times a day. As part of event planning, consideration is also given as to whether or not we need additional portaloos. This is part of the health and safety risk assessment that's undertaken for any event that's held within the area. I'm not aware of any current plans to refurbish them.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Did you want to ask your second question on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah.
So given that that there is a PSPO in place to stop defecating and urinating in public, together with the fact that the council is encouraging many older and younger people to visit the park, does the portfolio holder accept that improving the facilities and ensuring they're available for every large event should be a priority? And I do understand that you may have partially answered that, but I think I have used it myself, and this question did come from residents' questions to myself, so I haven't just made it up. Thank you.
Councillor Banks.
Mr. Mayor, the administration encourages everyone, residents and visitors, to enjoy our open spaces, including Gaybridge Park. I do not accept that it should be a priority. It is a priority.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. We now move on, do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Hobson?
Yes, I do. Just very quickly.
Councillor Hobson.
Just want to apologise for not getting the right portfolio holder. I was assured that you were the person to do this. So thank you for answering the question. Thank you for your work with your colleagues. This supplementary was prompted by Councillor Anderson's presentation. So again, apologies if this isn't the right person, but just to say that is quality toilet provision included in the plans to draw people away from Ashridge? So for improving other locations for people to go and enjoy green spaces. Thank you. And I'm happy to take a written answer because if that's not your portfolio, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Indeed, that is beyond what I know the answer to. Absolutely. I'll get a response properly from Councillor Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. We now move on to a question to Councillor Graham Barrett from Councillor Sally Symington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Barrett, just before I address you, I just want to address Councillor Williams. This question has already come forward in an email form twice. So, we do try to do our best to work with you, and sometimes things just need to come to the council because we're not getting responses. So apologies for that. But Councillor Barrett, this refers to the Wildflower Meadows map listed on the website. I can give it decorum.gov/home, environment, street care, landscape, recreation, biodiversity and conservation. It's a welcome addition to the Decorum Borough website. The site in Buckingham Road, Tring, is the only site with no map attached identifying the exact location. Can you identify the location of the site and, for completeness, have it added to the map?
Thank you, Councillor Symington. I can confirm that the map has now been updated to reflect this location, and the location is a triangular piece of open space on the corner of Buckingham Road and Weavers Road. And I would add that I would agree that this should have been a written question, and I certainly haven't seen it as a written question. Had I have done, I would have responded to it. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Symington?
Yeah, so my supplementary questions are to do, obviously, with the same map. Thank you. So can you confirm how many of the sites, the wildflower sites, the DBC wildflower sites, with locations, how many are can you confirm how many are DBC planted, i.e. planted by Decorum Borough Council wildflower sites with their locations, and how many are effectively just no-mow areas?
Councillor Barrett.
Again, if I'd have seen that in advance, I could have got the information for you. I don't know. I should find out and respond with a written reply.
Yeah, I'm asking that on behalf of a colleague, and she and I will be happy to get an email on that. And the third one. How many of the DBC? How many are DBC? Are decorum initiatives, and how many are the result of requests from ward councillors?
Councillor Barrett.
My response is exactly the same to the last question.
Thank you. I'm happy to take written responses and also to my co-ward councillor, Anne Foster.
You got the request to circulate it to Councillor Foster as well, did you? Councillor Barrett? Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Okay, we'll now move on to a question for Councillor Williams. Oh, again from Councillor Symington.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williams, I haven't emailed this one to you in advance, but it is a Herts County Council initiative, so I'm sure you're aware of it. Given the growth of electric vehicles and the need to ensure that residents have access to charging points, How do you, as the portfolio holder, intend to work with Hertfordshire County Council following their change in stance to facilitate on-street electric vehicle charging points?
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I did become aware of it when I got the question, so I have done a brief bit of checking. But I understand yet there isn't a policy for Herts County Council for us to firm up on. But I understand there is a meeting between Herts officers and our officers, or HCC are setting up a meeting for officers across Hertfordshire in August to discuss their new EV strategy before it goes to the Environment and Transport Panel in September. And I'm sure they will gain more details how it's going to work. As such, then we will have sight of the new document and be able to feed into this. We have our own EV strategy for, as I said earlier, for our own car parks, and we'll weave that in with the HCC strategy, which I understand is likely to be a scheme which will permit installation of EV chargers on street, but I don't think HCC are likely to be undertaking that, and I think it's unlikely that DBC would be undertaking that. I suspect it will be for private providers to look at locations where it's feasible to do so under a scheme that HCC permit, which I think is a relaxation from their previous stance.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do you have a supplementary?
Yep, thank you. I think it's been partially answered. So the council's been, I would say, pretty secretive about the car parks they've been put forward to the programme, which you've now given us the names of the contractors for, so that's useful. Thank you. I think lots of residents will welcome that they're good names. But the reason given is that the residents who don't get their car park, get the EV charging points in the car parks near them will be very upset and disappointed. Presumably you don't know the answer to this because we're waiting for the DNO. Can you give a reassurance that those residents who are disappointed and cannot have EV charging points in car parks near them, that Decorum will facilitate and work with Herts County Council and external people, external providers, to give them on-street access, given that 40% of houses in the borough have no off-street parking?
Councillor Williams.
I think I take objection to the tone of that question to say that it's secretive. What I said in the answer to the previous question was all DBC car parks are on the list. So if you can't work out for yourself where the locations of DB car parks are, then I'm sorry that I don't think I need to write them all down for you. But it will be subject to, as I said before, a test of the commercial decision of the commercial operators whether that car park is viable. Whether that will generate enough traffic to generate an income from that particular charger. And yes, it may be that some car parks will not be found to be commercial. The supply can be too far away, the central number of chargers can be too small, and it's very likely, to be fair, that the network will be rolled out over time. It isn't going to be a big bang and they're all going to be there in the first week because there won't be the demand there for 100 chargers or whatever it is in the first week. And some people will have further to travel. And I'm sure when they purchase an electric vehicle, they'll factor those considerations in. We will work and facilitate the installation of EV chargers where it's practical to do so on street within the framework of Hertfordshire County Council scheme. So they'll decide where it's safe, if you can attach it to lamppost, where the supply comes from. What I don't expect Decorum to be doing is funding that process.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Simi.
Thank you, Chair. I won't ask any more supplementary questions on that item, but you'll be relieved to hear.
Very kind of you, but I see that you're going to make another appearance. Question for Councillor Anderson from Councillor Symington.
Yep, this is my final question. Thank you very much. You'll appreciate that actually I'm just bringing forward the concerns of residents when I'm raising these questions, and I think it is important that that actually they are aired in council and that people have the opportunity to hear the answers from the portfolio holders. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you. So the question to Councillor Anderson is, given the need to ensure that common policies apply across the borough, what measures does he as the portfolio holder undertaking to ensure... Oh dear, my laptop's died. The question is literally just disappeared in front of me, so you'll have to give me a second. So it hasn't actually died, it's just done that auto turning off.
Sorry, bear with. There you go, there's your question.
Okay. Well, this is great for the recording, isn't it? It hasn't actually died, it's just that it timed out for its auto turn off, whatever. Anyway, shall I start again? Given the need to ensure that common policies apply across the borough, what measures is the portfolio holder undertaking to ensure that the moratorium on development relating to the discharge of conditions is applied fairly and consistently across the borough? Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Mr Mayor, the restrictions requested by Natural England to protect the Chiltern Beechwoods affects developments in different ways depending on the specifics of the proposal. When discharging planning conditions, the council is required to review the precise wording of each condition on a case-by-case basis to determine whether it can be discharged or not. The council works closely with its legal team to ensure its approach is consistent in what is a complex area of planning law. The council has published detailed FAQs and we'll keep these on the website and we'll keep these under review. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I do have a supplementary, actually, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, can the portfolio holder explain why Decorum has a different policy relating to reserve matters from other planning authorities?
I'm not sure I can, Mayor, because I need evidence of that before I could comment.
Okay, so thank you. So the evidence obviously has been provided by residents who've had to get the advice from Queen's Counsel. Do you think it's fair and reasonable that residents are having to seek that advice to basically work their way through the process and get these reserve matters discharged?
If we are talking about the email that you sent me...
No, we're not.
As support in Longmarston, Wilston?
We're not talking about that.
It's a different case then. Okay, well, yeah.
Excuse me, Councillor Symington is entitled to a supplementary.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I struggle to accept the motivation behind the question. As I've already explained, the council has to follow legal advice itself and has done so. We're not in a position to bend the rules just because of a particular case.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I believe the question was that why have we a different understanding of how the moratorium should apply to our neighbouring boroughs and neighbouring authorities. Now, it's legitimate for Councillor Anderson to say that he hasn't got the answer to hand and he's happy to provide a written answer. What I regret the portfolio can't do is actually say that he's not going to answer it or actually make comments about why the question was posed. Councillor Symington was entitled to ask the question. Councillor Anderson is entitled to say, I will provide a written answer. I believe that's as far as the exchange should go.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you, Councillor Tindall.
I'm sorry, I'm entitled to provide the answer I provide. And I don't accept with looking at things in a different way to neighbouring authorities. One has to remember that we're the one that's closest affected by the issue. They may not be under the same constraints we are, but I don't accept that we're being inconsistent.
I'm sorry, when you say inconsistent, you mean as between us and other councils? Yes, or within our own policies. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Symington. Thank you very much for those questions and answers. We now move on to agenda item 7, business from the last council meeting. I don't believe that there is any. I've no doubt you'd correct me if I'm wrong. We now move on to agenda item 8, cabinet referrals. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I turn you members' attention to page 29 of the original agenda, CA 32 of 22, housing revenue account, business plan update with a resolve to recommend.
Seconded.
Then I turn members to the supplementary agenda referrals to cabinet, referrals to council from more recent cabinet, and CA 55 of 22, provisional financial outturn 2021-22.
Seconded.
Moving then down next page to CA 56 of 22, chief housing officer post with a recommendation.
Seconded.
Further down next page, CA 59 of 22, PMO project management office resource funding with a resolve to recommend.
Seconded.
And then turning to the bottom one, CA 62 of 22, which is titled incorrectly as West Herts, or maybe 61, depends which report it is titled West Herts Crematorium Joint Committee, but it should actually be Constitution Update, and the text under there is correct. So it was the title that was wrong that was causing confusion. The matter that the Cabinet considered under the crematorium was a matter for Cabinet, not Council. So there's a recommendation there.
Seconded.
And that concludes, Mr. Mayor, Cabinet referrals.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Agenda 9, overview and scrutiny referrals. There are none as far as I'm aware. Agenda item 10, changes to committee membership. Councillor Williams? None. Agenda item 11, changes to committee dates. There are none. Agenda item 12, call-in and urgency procedure. Councillor Williams, would you like to inform the Council of an urgent Part 2 portfolio holder decision?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As required under the Constitution, it's for information only of a decision taken under the urgency procedures in relation to the leisure contract, which was to agree a revised financial contribution from the operator to the Council for the current financial year. And because we wanted to conclude those negotiations as we're partly way into that year, the decision was taken under the urgency arrangements to secure the financial amount.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. That brings the business of the Council this evening to an end, so I declare the meeting closed at 5 minutes past 10 o'clock. Thank you.